All right, perception. So this is the fourth part of the course. We now turn to perception, which is the interface between the mind and the world. So through perception, we see physical objects like tomatoes, and we thereby come to know things about them. We know that this tomato is red and round. Well, do we? After all, things certainly are not always as they seem. This is the herring illusion. Of course, the two lines are perfectly parallel, even though they don't look parallel, they look bent. Sometimes things don't appear as they are. And maybe this phenomenon of appearance not matching reality is much more widespread than we're initially inclined to think. After all, what does science tell us about this tomato? Doesn't it tell us basically that it's just a bunch of colorless particles interacting in some complicated way? Science or physics or chemistry doesn't seem to make any room for the possibility that this vivid red color is really in the tomato. Surely, if this vivid red color is anywhere at all, it's not in the tomato, it's somehow in your mind. Of course, the tomato has this tendency to reflect light of some wavelengths and absorb light of other wavelengths. But the color as we see it, is not in the tomato itself. It's in the mind. Okay, well, as soon as you got that far, then, of course, there's nothing special about the tomato. This goes for absolutely everything. We suddenly have this global thesis that nothing has any color, that color is this gigantic, monstrous illusion, that roses are not red, violets are not blue, grass is not green, even though they look that way. And it's hard to stop at color. As soon as you go down that route, you end up with the view that reality is absolutely nothing like the way we perceive it to be. So we're going to look at that in this part of the course. Perhaps the tomato, the real tomato that we see, is nothing like the way it appears. But wait, there's also another possibility, namely that we don't even see the tomato. So the first possibility is, the first sort of apocalyptic possibility is, yeah, well, we see the tomato, but it's nothing like the way it appears. Just like we see those lines. We really do see those lines. It's just they're not the lines are not the way they appear. Another possibility is, equally, maybe more apocalyptic, is we never see the tomato in the first place. And in fact, some scientists, okay, I thought I should just say, and we'll come onto this later in the term, but many scientists who work on color perception agree that nothing really has any color, that the tomato really isn't red. Some scientists disagree with that, but I'm just saying this is not some weird view that only philosophers are attracted to. Okay, so what about seeing the tomato? Well, here's a quote from Chris Frith, who's a famous English psychologist, very, very well known for his work on schizophrenia. He wrote a popular book about cognitive science, which is very good, well worth reading, called Making Up the Mind. And in that book, he says, as if it's kind of more or less obvious, or, you know, if you just take a few courses over at Brain and Cognitive Sciences, you'll see that this is right, that my perception is not of the world, but of my brain's model of the world. So that seems to suggest that we don't actually see the tomato. I don't see the tomato. What I see instead is my brain's model of the tomato, which is presumably something different. It's not the tomato. So we've got two things in play. One is that we see the tomato and that it isn't as it appears, and the other is we don't even see the tomato in the first place. We see something else, our brain's model of the tomato. Okay, so it's those two things, those two surely very disturbing possibilities that we will be examining in part 4.